Good morning, everyone. Good morning, students. For today, still in practical research 2, which is quantitative research. Now, I'll bring you immediately to the collection of data, which is the data gathering. Now, how are you going to gather your data in doing your quantitative research? When we say data gathering, this is the process in in which you are going to collect the data. This activity is to be done with the use of instruments. Now, what are the instruments that you are going to use? Now, you have to think about it, whether you are going to have your survey questionnaires, or if it is an experiment study, then there is an observation, a careful observation through a scientific analysis. Now, these data are subjected to analysis, and of course, if you are doing quantitative research, as I've told you, statistical methods of statistical methods is really needed, and of course, the interpretation. Thus, it is imperative that the data to be collected should be gathered with the use of systematic methods and procedures. Now, when we say data, ito yung mga sources mo, mga instruments mo, which are the primary data, the secondary data. There are classification of data. There are two types of data that may be gathered for any numerical investigation. Of course, it is a numerical investigation because you are doing a quantitative research. These are the primary and the secondary data. Now, when we say primary and secondary data, it can also be used in qualitative and quantitative. Now, I go back. The primary data are those information that can be directly collected from the first-hand experience or direct sources. Now, how do you understand that? These are the data that you have collected directly, or you have sorted it out, you have tabulated it out when after you have gathered the data, after you have collected the data. Now, examples of these types of data are the autobiographies, the diaries. That is what we call the primary data, or the first person accounts. The first-hand nature of primary data make it more reliable and more detailed. Now take note, reliable and more detailed. They also lend more relevance to the researcher due to his direct participation in the data gathering activity. Now, it is very important that you have to be involved. You have this participation through a direct data gathering activity. Now, the secondary data are the information that were already gathered by other persons which are available in published or unpublished forms. Now, how do you understand secondary data? These are the data or the literature reviews that you have gathered from the sources of information like internet at the Google, and you are browsing all those literary works, published or unpublished. Now, how do you understand that? Published, these are because in research, in thesis writing or in dissertation, there are thesis, master's thesis, and doctoral thesis dissertation. So sometimes it is not published, although it can be published locally within the school or the university. But when we say published, these are the the thesis writing or the dissertations that you can actually see at the internet, in which it is really published. Okay. Now, the examples of secondary data are those that are taken from books, magazines, biographies, office records, and is also at the internet. Okay, those are the differences between the primary data and the secondary data. Now I'll bring you again to the methods of data collection. One thing leads to another. You have to at least registration. Registration is a part of the methods of data collection. This method is usually done in observance of existing laws. Example, the registrations of students, birds, cars, licenses, and etc. Those are registrations, which is a part or of the methods of data collection. Another one is the use of existing data. Ano yung mga existing na nandyan na mga data na pwede mong gamitin sa iyong research? Now, the use of existing data includes data that have been accumulated for administrative purposes and historical descriptions. Sometimes there are records at the registrar's office in which you can use it for your quantitative data, or you can use it as a part of the methods of your data collection as you go along. Examples of this data are those that are found in government offices, as in census data, in Philippine Statistics Authority, or also the DepEd data. For example, SBM assessments. You can just make a permission from the registrar or from the principal's office in order for you that you will be able to retrieve all those records from the registrar's office. So those data are also important while doing your quantitative research. Another part or another method of data collection is the experiment. Experiment. This is done when the objective is to collect data and on cause and effect relationships of certain phenomena under controlled conditions. Now, how do you understand phenomena? These are the um, a certain a natural experience, natural experiences or natural happenings. If you are doing your experiment, for example, in science there are a lot of experiments. Now we call it you observe that experiment in a particular phenomena. I mean, there is what we call under controlled conditions. For example, if for example in agriculture, they are using quantitative research. So there are three planting seeds, different variety of seeds. Now every day you are going to observe each variety, kung alin doon sa mga variety ang mabilis na tumubo at alin din doon kung saang variety rather, ang mabagal siyang tumubo. So those are the examples of phenomena under controlled conditions if you are doing quantitative research through an experiment. Usually, this has been done through scientific researches, yung mga ginagawa ng mga taga UP Institute. And it can also be a quasi-experiment. So when we say quasi, it can be qualitative and quantitative research. You are trying to, the dominance of it can be qualitative and quantitative. That's why we called it quasi-experiments. Usually it has been done in educational institutions. They are always doing such experiments, especially in the big university, especially for example, in Caraga State University. From the College of Agriculture, they have this field of research, especially in agriculture, where in variety of species of trees or in vegetables are being experimented in a particular area. Then every day or every week they have to monitor those variety of species. So we call it experiments. So sometimes it can be done like a quasi experiment. Now another method of collection is the observation. Wow, this observation is also applicable in qualitative research. I mean, Observation can be done both in qualitative and quantitative research. Observation can be done by means of senses. Now, according to the research, some of the research books, observations can be done through, these are the sense of seeing, sight, sense of hearing, taste, touch, and smell. The sense of sight is the most common method. This is used when the purpose is to gather overt behavior of research subject respondents. Of course, if you are going to conduct a research study regarding the behaviors I've told you, you have to at least use your senses. So that's it. Now, there are two types of observation in research. We call it participant and non-participant observation. Now, let us identify the distinct differences between the participant and non-participant observation. Because according to the books of research, observation can be participant and non-participant observation. Now, in participant observation, the researcher is personally involved in the activities being observed. In other terms, we call it direct experience. We call it participant observation. You yourself as a researcher is personally involved in the activities being observed. A very good example is the anthropological studies where the researcher immerses himself with a group to be able to understand the different aspects of the lives. Shall we say a tribe? For example, you want to study the behavior of Mangyan people or a particular tribe. So we call it participant observation. You direct yourself involved in that particular group. Of course, it's an advantage because your research would be very realistic, would be very influential. Now, when we say non-participant observation, when we say non-participant observation, you are just giving the questions, the survey questionnaires, descriptive questionnaires. We call it the open-ended questionnaires. Now, the non-participant observation, the researcher does not participate in the activities, but she or he has the instrument, especially the survey questions. Usually, an open-ended questions. He just observes with the use of his five senses in the gathering of data. He just observed. Another term of non-participant observation is he just observed. He's just observing a person uh, whether through his senses he would be able to identify a particular behavior of a particular respondent. Okay, let's proceed. Another types of observation we call it. We also have structured and unstructured observation. Now, what is meant by structured observation? Meaning, the items of a variable to be observed are specified and listed down. For example, teaching performance observation. Now, somebody is trying to observe, but he has these structured objectives. He or she has created a particular criteria or mechanics. How he or she is going to observe a particular demonstrator or the performance of a teacher through a teaching performance observation. Now that is what we call structured observation. Another term is the unstructured observation. Unstructured observation. There is no list of items to be observed. Wala siyang listahan. There are no items. Any object, condition, or behavior that is relevant to the investigation is included in the observation. This is generally used in participant or uncontrolled observation. So, unstructured observation can be uh, are being used in participant or uncontrolled observation. These are the these are the behaviors, or these are the natural happenings, which is uncontrolled observation. So that is unstructured observation. Another types of observation is that if you usually it happened to the graduate programs if you are doing your master's thesis and dissertation. But anyway, you are still in the basic quantitative research. So let's not focus to it must be we have to start from the very bottom for you to understand better. Okay. So for the meantime, I have to cut it out. I have to cut my video teaching this time because I think it's about 10 minutes, so I have to stop it. However, try to reflect what has been discussed by myself.